Hi friends, welcome back. Today we are getting into the fun part of the painting, I would say, and we're going to work on some coral and adding some life and some bright colors to this painting so that next time, hopefully, we'll actually be working on that sea dragon and some, fish, critters, etc. But for now, let's continue on this real-time adventure on this undersea painting, shall we? Let's go. So I'm going to be perfectly honest with you guys. I have been insanely busy, and I have not had as much time to paint as I would have liked. So I hadn't worked on this in about 2 weeks. I had come in my office a couple of times. I had looked at the painting, but there just wasn't time and I didn't have energy to really sit down and work on it. And then finally, this past Sunday, so like 3 days ago, I realized that I didn't have this video ready for this week. And one of my big goals for this year is to not miss a video. And technically, I already kind of missed one because I did skip a week when I got Jester. But aside from that, which I feel like that's a reasonable reason to skip a week, I've been really good about getting all these videos done on time. And also, having the videos is a good way to kind of keep me a little bit more accountable when it comes to actually painting and making sure that I am taking the time to sit down and work on my craft and work on a painting and actually put in the time and the effort and the energy because, like I said, I haven't had a whole lot of time or energy lately. So thank you guys for keeping me accountable just by being there and watching these videos. I do greatly appreciate it. I don't think you guys could ever fully understand just how much it means to me to have a consistent reason why I need to be painting, even though I haven't gotten my website up and running, even though I haven't done a lot of the stuff that I wanted to be doing by now. Just having you guys watching these videos is enough for me to kind of force myself to find that spark, that gumption inside me to sit down and work on a painting, even when I'm pretty darn tired and I would rather be doing, nothing. So I had also been kind of looking at this painting and eyeing it and recognizing that we were getting into the scary part. We were getting into the part where it's not just background things that you're not necessarily going to spend a whole lot of time looking at. We were getting into the things that are going to draw your eye, the things that are full of color and life and detail. And when you haven't had a lot of time and when you haven't had a lot of gumption, those are very often the things that are the scariest to sit down and paint. So there was also that part of me that was looking at this painting and just going, I don't want to do that. That's going to be scary. And again, doing this as a real-time series for the channel has made it so that I can't just turn it around and not think about it for a long period of time. This is also, I had a goal to finish 8 full-sized canvases this year, and this is my 8th. So at the very least, I need to finish this painting this year. So I can't just turn it around, face it toward the wall, and not think about it for a year like I did with the Ravine canvas that we finished a couple months ago. I needed to actually sit down and work on it, and I needed to get past that fear. And honestly, I think that going back and finishing that Ravine painting was a big reason why I had the nerve and the gumption to get myself to actually start on this one as soon as I did. And yeah, it took me 2 weeks, and it took me a looming deadline to actually sit down and put paint to canvas, but I still followed that deadline. I didn't go back and paint something different. I actually made myself sit down and work on this canvas. And I think that's also part of why I was on the phone while I was working on it, because then I could turn off a little part of my brain and just kind of paint and not necessarily put a extensive amount of thought into exactly what I was doing or where everything was going. I could kind of intuitively decide what would go where and how everything was going to look. And a lot of the time, I do prefer how paintings turn out when you turn off that part of that, like, logical part of your brain that says how many things have to go where and how you need to weight everything and things should be perfect and symmetrical and it needs to line up and be a little bit too much like graphic design when it's a painting. I love the paintings where I get to turn off that part of my brain and I get to just create and be and kind of unite with the painting in a different way. I don't really know a better way to put that. But so the big point of this session is to actually get some other colors down on the canvas. If you recall, we were really working with 3, maybe 4 colors to get the entire background done. And now I'm coming in with some bright greens and some purples and some peachy pinkies and a different shade of light blue and some turquoise to really add some variety and make this much more of a coral reef. And like we've talked about before, I have been wanting for a long time to do a full underwater scene like this. And a big part of that is doing the coral, doing the seagrasses, doing all of the color that's down at the bottom of the ocean. And as much as I wanted to do that, it's also honestly terrifying to be working with these pretty dark colors and then suddenly go in with these much brighter tones. But again, this is fitting into the same series as The Fox and the Fairy, so it doesn't necessarily need to look like what our coral reef looks like. This world that I've created has a lot more contrast between light and dark, and it makes sense to continue that with the underwater scenes. So I am deliberately leaving a lot more of that dark underneath the coral and the leaves and the bright colors than what I think even I was expecting. I thought that I would end up covering almost all of this, and technically by the end I do cover the majority of this dark section in the foreground, but I do also leave a decent amount of it. There's enough there that you can tell that that's a dark color, and in my mind that kind of alludes to the fact that all of these things that we're painting in this session would be bioluminescent. I absolutely love the idea of having all of these glowing plants and glowing corals at the bottom of the ocean and then having this beautiful sea dragon swimming through the whole thing. That's kind of the vision that I've latched onto, particularly in this session. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't fully know what that sea dragon looks like yet. I have put together a couple of reference photos. I have a few different ideas of what I want him to look like and where exactly on the canvas I want him to be. But at the same time, I haven't put too much thought into it, again, for that same reason of sometimes if you think too much about the difficult part of a painting, the next step that you're on right now can seem too daunting. So if I think too much about the sea dragon and what he's going to look like, and oh my goodness, how am I going to do that, then it makes it even harder to focus on the corals and the leaves and the bright colors and the bioluminescence and the section that I'm working on right now, where what I need to be focused on and what I need to be thinking about is the section I'm working on right now. So there is definitely a time for planning, and there is 100% a time to not think so much about the plan and just think about the step that you're on right now. And honestly, that has been a thing that I've really taken to heart as a person, because I love to have a plan. I kind of live my life by a plan. I literally have a list of things that I'm going to do this evening after I'm done with this voiceover, and I'm so looking forward to crossing them all off the list one by one as I finish them. I love to have a plan. But when I wrote my plan, I recognized that the thing that was going to take the longest was recording this voiceover and working out. So those two things I have allotted the most time for, and I've set it up so that I'm recording this voiceover. I'm going to do a bunch of tiny tasks that won't take very much time and won't take very much brain power, and then I'm going to work out. So that while I'm doing this voiceover, I can just think about the voiceover. I don't have to think about the little tasks that are coming later, and I definitely don't need to think about that workout because I know that's going to be hard, and honestly, I don't want to think about it. I can just focus on sitting here with you guys and talking about this painting and talking about these bright colors and this bioluminescence and this really fun concept for an underwater painting that is unlike any kind of landscape I've done before because it's underwater, and how cool is that? I can focus on that, and I don't have to think about tomorrow or the day after or the plans that I have for the next week. I don't have to think about the big looming things in the distance. I can just focus on this thing right here, right now. And it has been really fun and really interesting for me to get to see the different ways that I do my art and the different ways that I can kind of take the principles that I use when I'm painting and apply them to my everyday life like that, because I used to have a really hard time if my plan changed or if anything went wrong and now I'm going to have to shift some stuff around and I'm not going to have time to get everything off my list done tonight, and oh, woe is me, what am I going to do? And since painting more often and since having some honestly oddball things happen while I'm trying to paint, I have this new perspective of, okay, well, things happen and roll with the punches, and if you don't have time to finish this section right now, then finish what you can and you'll come back to it later, and it's not a big deal because it's not like the deadline was anything more than self-imposed anywhere. And obviously this does not apply to anything at work, because work does have deadlines that are not self-imposed. But you know what I mean. I think it is really helpful for your non-work life, and in some ways to your work life too, just to know what parts of your plan can change, what parts of your plan you need to think of when, and when to just let things go. Because if I think too much about what my original plan was for this painting, I'm going to be really disappointed because it already doesn't look like what my original plan was. It looks pretty darn different, actually. And there's nothing wrong with that. It looks really good. It looks really pretty. I am absolutely loving how it's turning out so far. but it really looks nothing like what I originally had in mind. I had the idea of having more colors than this. I had the idea of having the light coming through the water a little differently than this. But in all honesty, I really like how the water came out. I don't think it needs to be anything different than this. I think this is the most ideal that it could have been for what this painting is turning out to be. And I'm honestly really excited to see where everything goes, especially with adding in the sea dragon and potentially a jellyfish or some other little fish. You know, there will be critters. And I don't know, just the prospect of adding all of these different things that weren't necessarily in the original plan, but are fitting into the plan now and are changing the concept of this painting into something new and something better than what I had originally thought of. Because, to be perfectly honest, the first idea that you have is generally not the best idea. It's a good idea, sure, but it can always be honed and refined and changed and turned into something even better and even brighter than what you had at first considered. And I think that's a big step to be able to recognize that in any part of your life. But for me in particular, especially for stuff in my art, because I used to really sketch out what I was going to paint. And I think that's because I was always a seat of your pants writer, and I wanted to do something a little differently when I was painting. And then I would just get upset because I didn't follow my original idea. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with coming up with an idea that's better than the original and turning your painting into something that it never would have been without your secondary ideas. I don't know. I think it's fun to see the evolution of a painting. It's more fun to watch in a video than it is to experience in person in a lot of ways. And in a lot of ways, it's more fun to experience in person than it is to watch in a video. So it's one of those very interesting things that I think we could all get more of in life. So anyway, I have been spending all of this time just adding little corals and little leafy greens, and I have 2 or 3 different reference photos that I'm keeping on my phone that are showing me some different ideas of stuff that I could add and stuff that I could tweak to make this the really lively and really bright, bioluminescent, fun color scheme that I now have in my head. I mean, I always had a bright, vibrant color scheme in mind for this, but I think originally it was going to be a lot brighter and a lot more vibrant. And as I started adding colors, I was recognizing that while it was good to have all these bright, vibrant colors, it also needed that bit of shadow and dark and the contrast between the dark rock and the bright bioluminescent coral. It makes more sense in my mind to have that contrast. It feels right. I don't really know how else to explain it. I really like how it turned out though. And this is really when you see exactly how long it takes to paint some of these teeny tiny details. I tried to set this up in a way in which you would be able to see as much as possible while I was working on this. But again, I'm right-handed and the camera is set up to my right. I have tried multiple times to set up the camera so it's on my left and you'd be able to see more of what I'm painting because the camera wouldn't have my arm between it and the canvas. But for some reason, it doesn't work. Y'all, I've tried so many things. It's not that my arm is blocking the canvas. It's that my body is blocking the canvas. I don't know what it is. I can't figure out how to angle myself so that I'm not blocking the shot no matter what. So here we are, and my hand partially blocks the shot, but you get to see the finished bit after I move my hand away, so I think it works. I will also say, because it's happened a few times, and it happened again right there, I don't know what got into my camera while I was recording this, but it did not like the lighting, and the lighting was no different than it ever is. So I'm not sure what happened, but it keeps kind of flashing between light and dark, and I didn't realize it until I was editing this, and the flashes are too short for me to actually reasonably do anything about it, so sorry. It's not really flashy, it's just color shifty, and I don't really like how that happened, but I'll play with my camera and hopefully it won't happen again. We will see. Technology, am I right? Anyway. So this little branchy piece of coral that I'm working on, I kind of felt like he was the bane of my existence while I was working on him. He's still not my favorite. He's blue and purple and a little coral with a bunch of little polyps on it. And I had a reference photo for this one. It's an actual coral. I don't know what it's called. But I felt like no matter what I did, it just wasn't coming out correct. But once I finished and I step back and I look at it, he looks lovely. So I don't know what to tell you. He took me forever to paint. I wasn't happy with him. If you look at him too closely, I'm still not happy with him. But from the correct distance away from the canvas, he looks great. He's fine. And I think that is also a thing to bear in mind as a painter, especially, is that your paintings are not generally meant to be viewed from super duper close. This size of canvas, I would expect you to be at least a couple feet back. The bigger the canvas, the farther back the viewer should be. Makes sense, right? If the canvas is huge, you need to step a few yards back in order to really be able to see the whole thing and not feel like everything is the wrong scale. So, if you're ever painting a canvas and you feel like some things just look wonky, try stepping back and see if they still look wonky, because a lot of the time they actually look fine. It's just that you are too close to your canvas. I don't remember where I learned that, but it's kind of one of my favorite little tidbits, and it helps a lot. So, needless to say, this canvas has been a lot of fun. It's very different, like I've said, I don't know how many times. And it's just been a blast to try something that has been on my bucket list for so long, and to try something that's kind of on the edge of things that I've worked on before, because I do a lot of forest scenes. I do a lot of interestingly shaped plants in those forest scenes, and it's really interesting to see how much the corals look like little plants or rocks or anything like that. It was just fascinating to me to see just how much I already knew how to do because I had been doing it before. Because coral generally is rock-ish, so it's not going to move with the water. But there's like seagrass and stuff, and that is going to move with the water. So I could paint that exactly like I paint grass, which I don't know, for some reason I wasn't expecting that. Maybe I should have been expecting that, but it happens. And it was really fun to see how this thing that had been so daunting to me for so long was actually so close and so within reach, purely because I had been painting woodland scenes for so long. Because I've wanted to paint an underwater scene for literally years. I have no idea for how long I've wanted to paint more underwater scenes. I've collected reference photos. I've looked up tutorials on how to do all of this stuff, and I just never done it. It felt like one of those things that was unattainable. It was out of reach. It wasn't a thing that I would realistically be able to do. I felt like I couldn't do it. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the training. And then to sit down a couple days ago and start painting corals and seagrasses and realize that I had all the skills that I needed. I just needed to find the gumption and the drive and I needed to let that desire to paint this scene actually come through and stop telling myself that I couldn't do it because I didn't have the skill set. Because in reality, I did have the skill set. I do have the skill set. And assuming the rest of this painting comes together as well as I think it will, I will probably paint more underwater scenes. Maybe I can have a whole other series or like a whole mini series inside the Fox and the Fairy world that has underwater themes. Maybe I can have some stuff where it's half and half, where there's underwater things and like seashore things. I feel like this is opening up a whole new realm of possibility for me, and that has been really, really fun to discover. And I don't know, it kind of feels like this little child inside of me is getting extra excited at the prospect of being able to paint this underwater thing. And it's like getting to gratify that little inner child part of me and be like, look, we did the thing that we always wanted to do. We got to create this underwater realm. Look how pretty it is. Look how good we did. And I'm sure many of you know how fulfilling and how exciting it is to get to achieve something that your inner child has always wanted to achieve. It's so gratifying and it's so fun, and you kind of feel like you're a kid again getting to do all of this. And that's kind of how I felt working on this painting, because I love underwater scenes. I am fascinated by the ocean, which, if you know me, is hilarious because I can't swim and I'm terrified of open water. But I'm so fascinated by all of the life and all of the stuff that's underwater. It's just so cool. I absolutely adore underwater documentaries. I watch them all the time. They're so fun. I used to have a saltwater fish tank. They were amazing. One day I would love to have them again, but they're ridiculously expensive. So right now I have a rabbit. I love underwater stuff. I wrote a whole book that half of it took place underwater because I so love underwater stuff. And now getting to this painting is it's really fun. It's really exciting. I love how it's coming together. I hope that you guys like it too. Like I said, here I'm adding some more color. I'm adding I think this is like a emerald green mixed with a peacock blue, just to add a little bit of depth to the ground and kind of make it look like the rock has some little coral polyps on it. I did the same thing with a little bit of Naples yellow, yellow ochre, and I think it's ballerina pink, just to add that little bit of color. I had seen some photos of coral reefs where there's like big old rocks that are just yellow, and I assume that that's coral. I didn't really look into it, and I haven't watched too many documentaries to know a lot about coral, but I know a lot about fish. I really like fish. One day I will also paint fish. This is my proclamation. One day I will paint more fish. For now, coral. So, I spent a lot of time on this part that I'm working on right now. So, if you have seen pictures of coral reefs, then I'm sure you have seen these little, they're not little, these big coral rock dudes that kind of look like a brain. That is what I am painting right now. I don't think that it came through very well on the video. Again, I tried. I did my best. It's tiny details, and you get what you get. So, the coral part itself is like a peachy, pinky, yellowy lump. And then I am using dioxazine purple to add the like cracks in the brainy texture. And I think it came out really cool, and I really wish you could see it better on camera because I'm really proud of the amount of detail I got on these sections. I'm going to do 3 of them, and that's probably actually going to be the better part of the rest of this video, is just me drawing the lines on a brain. But I think that they do come out really cool. I think it has just the right amount of detail. They're really pretty. They have a really cool texture at the end. Definitely worth putting the time in, but man, by the end of it, my hand was tired. So I think a lot of the rest of this video is going to be me reminding you that this is, in fact, a real-time painting session. So all of the cuts that you have seen in this video have been because I was talking on the phone and I paused to have a long conversation with my friend, and I was doing nothing on the canvas, so I cut. That's been about 90% of the cuts. A couple of the others where I couldn't find the right paint color. I'm not going to have you stare at a canvas on which nothing is happening while I'm rummaging through my paints. But this is a real-time painting session. I'm not speeding this up. I'm not slowing this down. I am showing you exactly how long it takes to put in the time and put in the effort to do a painting like this. I believe this full session, if you count the time that I was talking on the phone and not actively painting, this video would have been about an hour. So I probably cut close to 20 minutes was just me yapping or not doing anything in particular on the canvas. But technically I was sitting in my office painting for an hour. And this is what I did in an hour. And I think that that is something that aspiring artists should see more of, is how much can you do in an hour? How much can an amateur do in an hour? How much can a professional do in an hour? Just to have a general idea, so that if you do decide to start painting and you do decide to dabble in the arts, that you have an idea in the back of your head of how much time other artists spend doing the things that you're doing. And then, of course, what I would say if you're new is to double it. So if you were a new artist and you were going to paint all of these corals on this pre-painted background, I would say that you would spend at least 2 hours doing about the amount that I'm doing here. And it might be to a different, if you're trying to go for the level of artwork that I have in this painting. So you're not being sloppy, you're taking your time, you're using the right brushes, you're picking the right colors, and you're being thoughtful but not too thoughtful about where each coral is going to go. I would expect it to take you about 2 hours to do all of this. If I was going to be teaching how to do something like this, I would plan 3 to 4 hours for me to teach how to do each of these specific shapes and each of these techniques and details. So I am thinking that you would already know some technique and have some idea of how to do a few of these details before coming into working on this painting. And obviously, I want you to get into art. I want you to paint. I want you to be creative and explore that creative side of yourself. I think that it is a fabulous escape from the world. It is a fabulous way to just kind of turn your brain off and just think about beautiful things or fun things or interesting things or whatever it is that you like to paint, whatever it is that you like to create, to just turn your brain off from the world and think about just that. Because I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about this, and we as humans weren't designed to know as much as we actually know in 2025. We know too much. We know way too much about the world as a whole, and we would be better off in some ways not knowing quite as much as we do. And because of that, I think that it's important to find an outlet, to find a way to express yourself and to get some of that negativity out of your mind and to get some of that difficulty, that hardship out of your mind just by doing something else, by allowing yourself to think about something else and be present with something else and not have to think about it, not have to put any mental power into the thing that's dragging you down, but to spend an hour, spend half an hour, spend 2 hours, spend 45 minutes, spend however much time you have doing something creative, doing something that lets you express some emotion in a positive way and in a way that's going to let you breathe and not feel so weighed down by everything that's going on in life. Because I know that life is hard right now for everybody. It just is. And that's where art is really important, because art is light and uplifting and beautiful. And we all really need some beauty in our lives. And if you can give yourself that beauty, then you're just adding more light and more life and more beauty to your everyday. And I think that that is a absolutely wonderful way to spend your time. And I love spending my time doing things that add more beauty, more light, more love to this world. I think it's necessary. I think that we as humans were wired for love, and we were wired for beauty. And it is important and it is special to add to that. So that's what I'm getting to do by satisfying my inner child and painting this underwater scene and doing all of these corals and exploring all this stuff that I can do now and all these things that I already knew how to do, but I didn't know that I knew. It is so much fun, and I honestly hope that some of you, even one of you, if one of you decided after seeing this video that, hey, that looks like fun, I should pick up some paints, or I should pick up some colored pencils, or I should pick up my kids' crayons and doodle something, then that's honestly made my day, because I want you to make stuff, I want you to create stuff, I want you to have fun with color and with expression. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful part of life, and it is something that we could all stand to have a little more of in our lives. I think it's important, and I think it's great. And here we are very nearly at the end of this painting. We have maybe 1 or 2 sessions left to go. I hope that you guys are liking it. Please let me know what you think in the comments. If there's anything in particular that you think I should add, if there's a particular kind of fish that you think would be really fun in this canvas, please let me know, because I would be super down to try to paint a couple of fish on here. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm excited to see where this canvas goes. I am excited to finish this one out with you guys. And I'm so happy that you've watched all the way to the end. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in a couple weeks with a brand new one that may or may not be in this series. It honestly depends on how much time I have and if I start working on Christmas presents now or later. You know how it is. Bye, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chill videos with art.